the studios of KPFK Pacifica Radio in Los Angeles, this is Uprising, and I'm Sonali Kohatkar. It's Friday, May 22nd, 2015. They Know Everything About You. That's the title of Robert Shear's book. The veteran award-winning journalist joins us in studio for the hour to discuss how data collecting corporations and snooping government agencies are destroying democracy. That's coming up after the news. Joining us now to analyze today's headlines is Arun Gupta, sitting in for Christina Mislan. Arun is a contributor to The Guardian, In These Times, The Progressive, and Truth Out. Welcome back to the show, Arun.
Nice to be with you, Sonali.
Months after a national scandal erupted over the Senate Intelligence Committee's report on the CIA's Bush-era torture tactics, a federal judge has ruled that the details of the report will remain secret. Of the 7,000-page report, only the 480-page executive summary has so far been released to the public, and that document was seriously damning. The judge effectively ruled that Congress has the right to keep things secret from the public, and since the Senate is now dominated by the GOP, their choice for secrecy has been declared constitutional. But it's not just the Republican presidency of Bush that has the stench of war crimes. The Pentagon admitted this week that Obama's war on Syria likely killed civilians, in particular children, and a new Amnesty International report just detailed widespread torture among both sides of the Ukrainian conflict, including the U.S.-backed Ukrainian government forces. Arun, how important is it for the public to see this CIA report in its entirety?
Well, I think it's very important. We need to know exactly what the CIA was up to, their use of torture, but the government doesn't want people to know because what we already do know is just a widespread incompetence. They were making it up as they went along in terms of the techniques and tactics they were using, that torture is ineffective, and in fact it's often counterproductive. And so the government will use a national security argument that that's a reason these documents don't need to be released. But what they're really arguing is that we can't reveal our incompetence because it'll make us look bad to the rest of the world.
Right. And then the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, just released a report concluding that income inequality is so high globally that it is actually damaging economic growth. The OECD, a think tank based in Paris, specifically found that 2/5 of the populations of rich nations have seen no financial gains over the past few decades. Specifically, the group said, quote, when such a large group in the population gains so little from economic growth, the social fabric frays and trust in institutions is weakened. The U.S. is especially stark in how high inequality is between the top 10% and bottom 10% of earners. In the U.S., it's double the average among developed nations. The report, entitled In It Together, Why Less Inequality Benefits All, suggests addressing gender inequality in the workplace and raising taxes on the wealthy among its recommendations. Arun, do you get the sense that the OECD is only sort of worried about income inequality because it's actually impacting the profits of corporations, that too many people are just too poor to consume, and so that's why we should worry about it?
I think that's a very important point. We see this type of utilitarian argument all the time, that economic growth benefits everyone. These arguments have been made for years about the Democratic Party, that actually the stock market has higher returns historically when the Democrats are in power than when the Republicans are. But what it doesn't get, though, is, of course, the political project of capitalism, and that they want to deny these resources to everyone else, because if we did have more equality under a capitalist system, you would find people would be fighting for more rights and for more benefits. So I think this report misses the broader political and historical implications.
And finally, the 6 police officers involved in the death of Freddie Gray in Baltimore have all been indicted by a grand jury after they were charged by the state's attorney's office earlier this month. While some of the initial charges were dropped, in particular false arrest, the most significant ones of involuntary manslaughter and second-degree murder remained intact. The jury also added charges of reckless endangerment. At the same time as this is playing out in Baltimore, the city has been racked by violent crime, while arrests are at an all-time low. Some have speculated that the Baltimore police might be intentionally engaged in a work slowdown, as the New York police did in the wake of protests and political fallout over the killing of Eric Garner. Baltimore Police Commissioner Anthony Batts denied rumors of a slowdown. Instead, instead blaming the public for monitoring officers too closely with cameras. Arun, what do you make of what's playing out in Baltimore right now? Is it a microcosm of the battles that we would see all over the country if police were actually made to face justice?
I think, yeah, that's a good way of putting it. The thing is, though, we have to remember it is virtually impossible to indict and convict police officers in this country because under the law, they are given such impunity that basically if they come before the jury and say they perceived a threat of some sort, they're going to walk away. And in the case of Freddie Gray, you're talking about you'd need other officers to testify against other officers. What's been, though, really important about what's going on in Baltimore is precisely revealing the extent of how horrifying the situation is, such as that the city has paid out something like $5.7 million to more than 100 victims of police brutality, or we've learned recently that 2,600 people have been turned away by Baltimore jails after arriving there injured in police custody in recent years. So we're really dealing with systematic torture and violence in Baltimore and across the country by police.
Arun, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Arun Gupta sitting in for Christina Mislan. He is a contributor to The Guardian in these times, The Progressive and Truth Out.